Hey everyone, hope you're all doing great. This is a new project of mine I've been planning for a while now. So, I'll be making a bunch of podcasts about different Formula One drivers. As many of you know, it's my absolute passion, Formula One. Um, so, I'll be starting with my first podcast talking about the biography of Lewis Hamilton, who is my absolute favorite driver. Just a quick disclaimer before we start. Um, so I've tried to stay as objective as I can, but honestly, in certain parts I have let my emotions and personal opinions show, especially in very controversial moments. We'll see that later. Um, so you may not completely agree with them, and sorry about that, but honestly, I'm a die-hard fan, so let's begin. Lewis Hamilton, from a dream to a legend. This is the story of 7 world championships, one rip-off, records, and a legacy that changed Formula One forever. So, who is Lewis Hamilton for those of you who are not aware? Lewis Hamilton is the most decorated Formula One driver this sport has ever seen. He holds the all time record for most wins with 106, the most pole positions with 104, and the most podium finishes, an incredible 207. His career has stretched across more than 2 decades, and in that time, his name has become part of Formula One's history. Lewis Hamilton grew far away from the glamour of the sport he was doomed to define. He was born in Stevenage on the 7th of January 1985. His father, Anthony, worked up to 4 jobs at the same time just to fund Lewis's early karting days. And that sacrifice really paid off. During his karting career, Hamilton won major championships, including the 1995 British Cadet title. And here's a very beautiful detail. Back in 1997, the BBC asked the young Lewis Hamilton if he thought that he could match Michael Schumacher's record of 7 world championships. And he replied, I'm not sure if 7 world championships would be possible. I would be happy with just one. After winning that British karting championship, Lewis attended the award ceremony carrying a leather book his dad had confectioned for him, with a special page for a phone number and signature of anyone worth meeting. And there he spotted Ron Dennis, the boss of the McLaren Formula One team. A young Lewis Hamilton walked straight up and said, Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton and I won the British Karting Championship. One day, I want to be a Formula One world champion in your car. Impressed, Ron Dennis signed the book, wrote his number, and said, Call me in 9 years. But Hamilton didn't have to wait. Ron Dennis himself contacted him 3 years later to offer him a seat in the McLaren Junior program. Lewis signed with McLaren at age only 13. With McLaren's backing, Hamilton began climbing the motorsport ladder at a frightening pace. He dominated Formula Renault, winning 10 of the 15 races in the 2003 season to take the title. He moved up to Formula 3 and became champion the very next year, winning 15 of the 20 races in 2005, and then became GP2, and then came GP2, Formula One's main feeder series, where he beat rivals like Nelson Piquet and even his own teammate to clinch a 2006 crown. 3 championships in 3 straight seasons. Now that was a performance that opened the biggest door of all. A race hit with McLaren for 2007. The dream finally became a reality, although not much was expected from a 22-year-old Hamilton racing alongside the 2006 F1 world champion Fernando Alonso. But Hamilton immediately delivered with a podium in his very first race for McLaren. He finished the season with 4 entire race wins and 12 podium finishes, tied on points with his teammate, losing the championship for 1 point to Kimi Raikkonen, the Ferrari driver. Hamilton had arguably the best rookie season the sport had ever seen. But that rookie season created a real problem. Fernando Alonso had joined McLaren expecting a clear number one treatment, which obviously is pretty normal because he was the world champion. Not he was not waiting for a rookie to come and demolish him in his very first year. Instead, his rookie teammate overtook him in the very first race in Melbourne. Alonso felt threatened, and the rivalry turned very toxic. When Hamilton defied team orders in Hungary, Alonso deliberately sat stationary in the pit box for 10 extra seconds to block him. That obviously handed Alonso a 5 place grid penalty because, according to the FIA regulations, it's obviously illegal, even today, almost 20 years later, and cost McLaren all their constructors' points for that race. Now, by the season's end, the garage has split into two war zones, and Alonso walked away, returning to his old championship winning team Renault. The 2008 season was a huge battle between Felipe Massa and Lewis Hamilton. There were plenty of controversies, but it all came down to the final race of the season in Brazil. Hamilton was leading the championship by 7 whole points. To become champion, he needed to finish just fifth or higher. Even though Massa won brilliantly in front of his home crowd, uh, for 39 seconds was crowned 2008 world champion, Hamilton on the very last lap was in sixth, chasing Timo Glock for that crucial fifth place, and passed him with just 300 meters left to the line. As Ferrari celebrated, Hamilton pulled off a last lap overtake to win the world championship by a single point. Can you imagine that? That's how fine the margins are in Formula One. That incredible season finale left us with a very famous quote by Martin Brundle. Is that Glock? Is that Glock going slowly? It is. That's Glock. Hamilton was crowned champion. But that first world title was so much more than just a personal achievement. Hamilton had just become the first black driver to win a Formula One World Championship, and at the time, youngest world champion in the sport. It was a genuinely historic moment, one that reached far beyond the racetrack and inspired millions of people around the world. Now, many of them hadn't even watched Formula One, but that inspired them, inspired young people, inspired older ones. You can always keep fighting for your dreams, and eventually they'll come true. Now, after winning this first World Championship, McLaren entered a pretty difficult era. They were no longer the unstoppable team they had been in the past. They were still fighting for wins, Hamilton was still getting podiums, but it was no longer for championships. So the question was no longer, can Hamilton win a world championship? It was, can he keep on winning titles with McLaren? So now he had to make a very difficult decision. He decided to leave. In 2013, he took a huge gamble and decided to leave the team that had brought him into Formula One. He went to Mercedes, a midfield team who had finished fifth in the previous year Constructors' Championship. Other drivers, including his own teammate from McLaren, Jenson Button, heavily questioned his decision. However, Hamilton wanted a new challenge. So in 2013, he teamed up with his childhood best friend Nico Rosberg and took over the seat vacated by a retiring Michael Schumacher. It was a leap of pure faith. Hamilton joined Mercedes at the perfect time. Huge engine regulations were coming for 2014, and Mercedes were about to build some of the most dominant cars the sport had ever seen. Hamilton's gamble was about to pay off spectacularly. But, and obviously there's always a but, this success would come at a very heavy personal price. Because on the other side of the garage was Nico Rosberg, his teammate and childhood rival. They would be racing in identical machinery, and that risked bringing some big, big troubles to both of them. 2014, and the era of Mercedes dominance begins. Hamilton won his second world title in the first year of those new turbo hybrid engines. Mercedes were untouchable, winning 16 of the 19 races, Hamilton having won 11 and Rosberg having won 5. Hamilton won the championship in an incredible season finale where the FIA, or the sporting regulations body of Formula One, chose to make a one-off double point scoring race, which meant that instead of a normal 25 points for the first place, they would get 50. That instantly brought Rosberg right back into the title fight. However, he suffered an ERS failure and finished down in P14. That handed Hamilton the championship on a silver platter. He didn't even need to battle. However, this second championship came with an even heavier cost to pay. His best friend and childhood rival didn't quite lack loose to his own teammate, who he was competing for against years. In 2014, Rosberg used a special engine booster in Bahrain to be able to beat Hamilton. In Monaco qualifying, he purposely locked his brakes and slid off in the Mirabeau escape road. That caused the yellow flag and Hamilton was forced to retire in his final flying lap. That handed pole position to Rosberg. In Hungary, Hamilton defied team orders, saying he wasn't going to compromise his own race for his title rival. In Belgium, Rosberg made contact with Hamilton, which caused a puncture to Hamilton and was forced to retire. Later, Rosberg, guess what? He admitted he had done that on purpose, to teach him a lesson. That season sparked fire between them. Big, big fire between them. It made them lose a lot of trust in each other and built the ground for a crazy mental warfare the next 2 seasons. 2014 was the start of absolute domination at a very, very high cost for two drivers. 2015 and Hamilton went back to back. He wrapped up his third World Championship at the Circuit of the Americas in Texas, with 3 whole races still to spare. It was a masterclass in dominance. Hamilton took pole in 11 of the first 12 races, giving Rosberg barely a look in. Across the season, he won 10 of the 19 races to Rosberg's 6. Together, the Mercedes pair once again crushed the entire field, racking up 16 victories and 18 pole positions between them. Hamilton was now a 3-time world champion, at the absolute peak of his powers, and pulling clear of his rival. But was his rival ready for that? With every title Hamilton was winning, the tension only rose. In China, Nico Rosberg accused Hamilton of deliberately backing him into the Ferraris behind. Hamilton flatly denied, saying it wasn't his job to look after his teammate's race. And then in Austin, Rosberg led for a long, long time until he ran wide, let Hamilton through, and effectively handed him both the race win and the championship. Losing that title in Austin cut Rosberg deeply. He responded by winning the final 3 races of the 2015 season, and that late surge quietly laid the foundation for the explosive, disastrous season that was still to come in 2016. The 2016 season marked one of the most toxic intra-team rivalries the sport had ever seen. Stung by his 2015 defeat, Nico Rosberg completely changed his mental and physical preparation for 2016. He hired a sports psychologist, practiced meditation, and even stopped cycling to shed leg muscle to lose every extra gram he could. Hamilton was caught completely off guard when Rosberg won the first 4 races of the season, building a massive 43-point lead. In round 5 of the season in Spain, the two Mercedes drivers collided into each other on the opening lap of the race. The team principal of Mercedes, Toto Wolff, made them sign a contract that said that if they crashed into each other ever again as teammates, they will be paying for the crash damages out of their own pockets. And don't get me wrong, but honestly, these cars cost quite a few $1,000,000. So it's not that they're very cheap to pay. But this wasn't enough. In Austria, while fighting for the win, they made contact on the final lap. Of course, it had to be on the final lap. These seasons were extremely dramatic, to be honest. I'm pretty sad I wasn't old enough and I didn't even know Formula One existed. Honestly, I'll be watching all these races now that I've actually learned quite a few things about them during this research. So let me finish the story. Rosberg suffered front wing damage, allowing Hamilton to win, while he crawled back home in fourth. As Rosberg later admitted in an interview, they both had to pay $360,000 each for the damages, and they were both threatened to be sacked if they ever caused a collision again. Thank God they didn't cause another collision. Hamilton fought back with a late mid-season surge, but a catastrophic engine failure while leading the Malaysian Grand Prix shrinked his championship hopes. Entering the final race in Abu Dhabi, Rosberg only needed to finish on the podium to secure the title, even if Hamilton won the race. Knowing a victory wouldn't be enough to win the World Championship, Hamilton led the race at an incredibly slow pace, trying to back Rosberg into Vettel and Verstappen so that they would overtake him. The Mercedes engineers panicked and kept on telling Hamilton to pick his pace up, fearing that they would lose the race win to the Ferrari. However, Hamilton flatly refused and replied, "Right now I'm losing the World Championship, so I'm not really bothered if I win or lose this race." Honestly, everyone knows that he was really bothered if he was gonna win or lose that race, but anyway, I won't judge him, okay? So Rosberg handled the pressure perfectly and finished the race in second place, winning the 2016 title by just 5 points. That's again very fine margins. In the post-race press conference, Hamilton was asked about Rosberg winning his maiden title. Hamilton obviously congratulated him and stated he did a fantastic job, so big congratulations to him, and I look forward to fighting with him next year. This quote was extremely ironic for two reasons. First of all, Hamilton had no clue. He spoke under the assumption that their intense, toxic rivalry would continue right into 2017. He spent time during that press conference smiling and reminiscently talking about how they had been racing each other since they were kids in go-karts. Secondly, Rosberg had to play along for a full hour, pretending next year they would still be together fighting for world titles. However, he had already made his mind up that if he won the world title, he was retiring. So he just had to sit there and look Hamilton straight in the eye. Just 5 days after the title decider in Abu Dhabi, Rosberg announced his retirement. This was a huge shock for Mercedes, Hamilton, and the sporting world. That left Hamilton's quote standing as a definitive final chapter of the Silver Arrows War. After 3 hectic years of intense psychological warfare with Nico Rosberg, Hamilton welcomed a new, far more supportive teammate named Valtteri Bottas, a man who'd go on to help him enormously in the title fights ahead. But this year, for the first time in 3 seasons, someone outside Mercedes could actually challenge them. And guess who that someone was? My favorite team, Ferrari. Honestly, Ferrari couldn't really do anything, but I'm not trying to foreshadow, but listen you guys, it's just the truth. They were able to win the championship because 2017 it was Hamilton world champion again, for the 4th time, equaling Sebastian Vettel's record with Red Bull. Now, they had actually built a masterpiece that was better than the Mercedes on the fast and twisty tracks, just like this year actually. But honestly, they just failed their strategy calls. That's just Ferrari. If I were to ask you to make a strategy call for a Formula One team, it would honestly be levels better from the Ferrari ones. Okay, but obviously I'm not trying to judge my favorite team over here, but sorry guys, that's just the truth. No, the 2017 season never became as toxic as the three previous years of battle. However, every championship battle has its own tensions. In Baku, on the safety car period, Hamilton slowed down a lot at the exit of a corner to manage the restart, but Vettel ran into the back of him, damaging his own front wing. After the race, Vettel accused Hamilton of brake testing him, but Hamilton replied, saying, if he wants to prove he's a man, we should do it out of the car, face to face. Now, honestly, that's very tough of him to say, I must admit. Hamilton, as I told you, eventually won the championship, even though actually Ferrari was leading for the first 12 races. But after the summer break, Ferrari suffered quite a few engine failures and first lap crashes. And just like that, Hamilton was crowned 2015 world champion. He sealed it very early, actually, at the Mexican Grand Prix. Um, he fought all the way back to ninth place, and because didn't tell you that part. So he collided with Vettel on lap 1, which gave him a catastrophic puncture, which was basically uh, enough to send him to the back of the grid because he had to pit and change his tires, obviously. But he fought back all the way to the top, finished ninth, which was mathematically enough to clinch his fourth world title. The rivalry continued into the 2018 season, but the two champions never lost their respect to each other, and obviously always kept their friendship stable and honest. In Hockenheim, Vettel started from pole position but crashed in the wet conditions. Hamilton, starting from a lonely 14th place due to a mechanical failure in qualifying, drove an incredible recovery drive to win the race and flip the championship standings completely. At Ferrari's home race in Italy, if the fans expected the dominant one to in red. Instead, Hamilton put on a spectacular show and absolutely humiliated Vettel and Ferrari. He pulled off an aggressive wheel-to-wheel pass on Vettel on the opening lap, causing Vettel to spin out at the back of the field. He eventually hunted down Kimi Raikkonen to win the race in enemy territory, cementing his psychological grip on the title. In Singapore, a track where Mercedes was expected to really struggle, Hamilton delivered what he still calls one of the greatest qualifying laps of his life, beating the team's own simulations by 3 whole tenths of a second. He beat the supercomputers they use in Formula One. Can you imagine that? Um, well, he converted that into victory. So in Sochi, Russia, came a pretty bittersweet moment for Hamilton. His teammate Valtteri Bottas was leading and was obviously set to win until Mercedes ordered him to move aside and let Hamilton through to maximize points against Vettel. That left Bottas heartbroken and Hamilton feeling like he hadn't truly earned that win. But just 2 races later in Mexico, Hamilton clinched his 5th world title, matching the legendary Juan Manuel Fangio. So I guess after all, it didn't really matter anymore, did it? His 2019 opened with a surprise. After a winless 2018, Valtteri Bottas has spent the winter growing a beard, training deep in the Finnish forest, and returning with a very fierce new attitude. He dominated the opening race in Australia and delivered that unforgettable radio message. To whom it may concern, fuck you. The media immediately hyped up this so-called Bottas 2.0, but that momentum didn't last quite long. Hamilton simply put his head down and demolished it, winning 6 of the next 7 races. The new look Bottas was fast, sure, but Hamilton was operating on a completely different level. A few days before the Monaco Grand Prix, Formula One lost the giant Niki Lauda, three-time world champion and the non-executive chairman of Mercedes. Lauda had been instrumental in bringing Hamilton to the team, and this one hurt deeply. In Monaco, Hamilton drove one of the hardest races of his life. His crew had put him on vulnerable medium tires, and for lap after lap he had to defend desperately from a charging Max Verstappen. Somehow he held on for the win, and afterwards, an emotional Hamilton dedicated that victory entirely to the memory of Niki Lauda. Breaking his recent habit of sealing titles in Mexico, Hamilton instead wrapped up his sixth World Championship at the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Texas, fitting the very same track where he'd won his third title back in 2015, muffle. So, 6 World Championships now. And with that, Lewis Hamilton stood just one single title away from equaling the record of Michael Schumacher, something he once thought impossible. But could he do it now? 2020, and the throne was just 17 races away. The season was obviously cut dramatically short by COVID-19 pandemic, leaving only 17 races to fight for the title. Surely, this would be finally the year that Red Bull challenged Mercedes properly, right? Well, no, not exactly. In the end, nobody could truly challenge Mercedes for the championship. Red Bull did come close and won a couple of races with Max Verstappen, but honestly, Mercedes still crushed the constructors' title with 573 points and 13 whole race wins. And yet, despite this domination, this strange, shortened season would go on to deliver some of the most incredible moments in Formula One history. But 2020 was also far more than just racing cars. Amid the global movements for social justice, Hamilton used his enormous platform to speak out. Remarkably, he convinced Mercedes to repaint the legendary silver Arrows cars into a striking all black livery for the entire season. He raced in a black and purple helmet, bearing the words Black Lives Matter, and led the drivers in taking a stand against racism before every race. He also launched the Hamilton Commission, a serious initiative to improve minority representation in British motorsport. This was Hamilton the champion, but also Hamilton the activist, using his voice for a change. On track, Mercedes had built the fastest car the sport had ever seen. But how the hell did they do this? Their secret was a brilliant and perfectly legal, just for one season, thanks to the FIA, um, a cheat code called dual axis steering. On the straights, drivers would pull the steering wheel towards their chest, which mechanically adjusted the front wheels to go perfectly straight. This eliminated tire drag, kept the rubber at the perfect temperature, and boosted their top speed before they pushed the wheel back to corner normally, which was an innovation so smart that obviously they couldn't F1 couldn't help but ban it for the next season. This very car still holds the all-time track record of 12 tracks on 3 wheels. The 2020 Silverstone Grand Prix marked one of the most historic moments of this sport. Hamilton was easily cruising to the finish line with over a 20-second lead, when with half a lap to go, oh, excuse me, excuse me, when with half a lap to go, his front left tire suddenly exploded, as had his teammates a few laps earlier. You can just see that on the picture. It's completely ruined. So now you're wondering, did he win or not? Well, he limped to the finish line on three tires to surprisingly take the race win with a 5.4-second difference from Max Verstappen coming in second. This produced one of the most iconic race finishes of the entire history of the sport. Then came a truly historic milestone. At the Portuguese Grand Prix at Portimao, Lewis Hamilton officially broke a record many believed would stand forever. Michael Schumacher's all-time record for race wins. This was his 92nd career victory, one more than Schumacher's 91. It was a deeply emotional moment not just for Hamilton, but for the entire motorsport world. Watching a record fall, and fittingly, he got to celebrate it alongside the man who'd made it all possible, his father, Anthony Hamilton, who'd worked those full jobs all those years ago to fund the little boy's karting dreams. Istanbul, Turkey. A golden chance for Hamilton to equal Schumacher's record of 7 world titles. But could he do it under these conditions? The track had been completely resurfaced just days before the weekend and it hadn't had time to cure, meaning the entire circuit had virtually zero grip. And then, on race day, the heavens opened. It absolutely poured down, turning this into one of the most treacherous races the sport had ever seen. Drivers were spinning out like crazy in practice and even in the race itself. Max Verstappen summed it up perfectly, joking that it was like trying to drive on an ice rink. Honestly, just quick parenthesis here. Red Bull has tried to drive their F1 car on an ice rink, and Max Verstappen was the driver to do it. So he probably knows how it feels like, doesn't he? Now, Hamilton had qualified P6 for this incredibly tricky race. While younger drivers like Lance Stroll and Verstappen tore up their tires by driving over aggressively, Hamilton just sat quietly in sixth place, just managing his pace and protecting his tires. As the track slowly began to dry, Hamilton's intermediate tires had completely worn down into smooth tires. They were basically slicks made of wet rubber. Although the pit wall told him to box, fearing another tire failure like earlier in the season in Silverstone, Hamilton insisted that he felt the grip and that he was staying out. And he nailed the call. It worked out perfectly. So, one by one, Hamilton picked off spinning cars, even lapping his own teammate who had spun a remarkable 6 times that same day. On lap 37, using DRS, he sailed effortlessly past Sergio Perez to take the lead of the Grand Prix. From there, he simply disappeared into the distance, eventually crossing the finish line on a huge 31.6 seconds clear. An astonishing drive, producing an astonishing result. 7 is possible after all, Lewis. This race win meant more than any of. He sealed the 2020 championship, becoming a 7-time champion of the world. As David Croft said, in 2020, off the track, Lewis Hamilton has found his voice. And on it, once again, he has found his groove. And now he finds himself alongside Michael Schumacher as top in the record books. The World Championship record is equaled. Lewis Hamilton wins the Turkish Grand Prix and is a 7-time champion of the world. He equals the record of the great Michael Schumacher, peerless in the way, peerless in the history of books of Formula One. A legendary drive from a legendary driver who stands alone on top of the world today. And at this moment of triumph, what did Hamilton choose to talk about? Not himself. Listen to what he said over the radio. Breathless, having just equaled the greatest record in the sport. That's for all the kids out there who dream the impossible. You can do it too, man. I believe in you guys. It perfectly captures who he is and what his character is all about. In the biggest moment of his entire career, his very first thought was not about himself. It was about congratulating his team. It was about thinking about the next generation, the kids watching at home, dreaming of becoming engineers, dreaming of becoming teachers, dreaming of becoming anything, dreaming of achieving their craziest dreams, just as he once did, as a little boy in Stevenage. You never truly forget where you start off. That always stays with you. That year, he didn't just equal Michael Schumacher's record. He overcame the odds. He proved his doubters wrong, and he showed that even the greatest records in sport can be challenged. His journey is a reminder that with very hard work, dedication, and belief, even the biggest dreams can become reality. By reaching the same heights as the greatest driver Formula One had ever seen, Hamilton proved that records are not impossible to break. They are there to be broken. Now, 2021. And this is where it all gets really personal with Max Verstappen, I must say. So here I'm gonna be completely unhinged and tell you my completely honest opinion. You may not agree with me, Max fans. Sorry about that. But I'm a die-hard Hamilton fan. I'm gonna protect this guy from anything you have to say. So let's just start. After an incredibly dominant and historic season for Hamilton, he had to face new troubles. For the first time in years, the Mercedes wasn't the fastest car. Red Bull had designed an incredibly stable car that was able to really challenge the Mercedes. In preseason testing, Verstappen and Red Bull easily topped the timing sheets, while the Mercedes struggled with balance and constantly spun out. But let's get into this, shall we? Gladly, Mercedes got most of their problems fixed by the time the Bahrain GP was around. Verstappen took a dominant pole position, starting first on the grid next to Hamilton in second. They knew they obviously didn't have the fastest car, so they went for a very aggressive pit stop strategy to jump Hamilton in the lead. And it did work, although he was left nursing his tires for the 16 last laps, while charging Verstappen was gaining a whole second per lap. Can you imagine that? With just 4 laps left, Verstappen tried an overtake move around the outside of Hamilton, but thank goodness me he stepped 4 wheels off the track, which means he needs to hand the position back. And somehow, Hamilton clinched the first win of the season with just 0.7 seconds in between them. Now, most of you have probably watched the 2021 season, but this race foreshadowed a lot about this season. Round 10, Silverstone. Verstappen is leading by 33 points. I have no idea how the heck he did that, but okay. Hamilton is obviously pretty frustrated because Verstappen is running away with the championship. Qualifying, Verstappen P1, Hamilton P2. Hamilton was attacking from behind, but in the Copse corner, the inevitable happened. Hamilton's front left wheel touched Verstappen's rear tire, sending the Red Bull hurtling into the barriers with a massive 51G impact. The race was red flagged, and Hamilton was handed a 10-second penalty for causing the collision. Now, okay, I'll not be supporting him on that. It was his fault, honestly. Although many other Hamilton fans would just argue that it was Max's fault, that he had to back off, but it's racing. We don't really back off. So I'll let that for you guys to think. With 25 laps left and Hamilton's penalty served, he drove an incredible recovery race to eventually win, marking his 8th win at Silverstone. But this crash had just blown the title fight wide open once again. The 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix was one of the most dramatic races of the whole season. Verstappen was leading the championship by only 8 points after the crash in Silverstone, and he had qualified P2. Hamilton was on pole, at a circuit where he'd always performed extremely well. On the first lap, fellow Valtteri Bottas caused the collision. Honestly, wherever you see collision in 2021, it's either Hamilton versus Verstappen or Bottas has done something, guys. I don't know. First lap collision, and if it's not Bottas, okay, that was pretty mean, I must say, but sorry, guys, it's just a podcast. Let's make some jokes. So, this crash damaged Verstappen's car severely, damaging his whole side pod and his front wing. This obviously caused the red flag and the delayed race restart. After the formation lap, all the teams decided to dive into the pits and change their drivers' tires for dry tires since the track had apparently dried enough. But Hamilton chose not to pit, so he defied his pit wall again. Now, okay, this time it didn't quite work out. Because look at this. He had the starting wing all to himself. He did have to pit on the second lap, and that's why he fell down to a lonely P14 and had to drive an incredible recovery race while sick. Guess what? He had long COVID symptoms, and he still drove that race, and he still finished P3. Now, who's the greatest, guys? Who's the greatest? Who's the greatest? Okay. Verstappen couldn't help but finish down in 9th. I'm happy about that, to be honest. And not tell that to Max fans, but I'm happy. And Hamilton snatched the championship lead from Verstappen. He was now ahead by a whole 8 points. Round 14, Monza, the Temple of Speed. Verstappen started on pole, Hamilton started 4th. On lap 26, Hamilton pitted and emerged right alongside a flying Verstappen. Into turn 1, the two title rivals were side by side. But Hamilton held the inside line, and his Mercedes was clearly ahead. Verstappen, though, refused to yield the corner. He hit the curb at the wrong angle, launching his Red Bull into the air, and it came down directly on top of Hamilton's cockpit. Verstappen's spinning tire ground against Hamilton's helmet before the cars finally came to rest. This was a genuinely terrifying moment. And guess what? Verstappen got out of his car and walked straight back to the pit. He didn't know if Hamilton was injured, if he was trapped, if he was conscious. And guess what he later said to the media? Well, if you're trying to reverse your car, you're obviously fine. You wouldn't be doing that if you're not fine. Well, okay, you can at least check on him, man. It's not that hard. I get it. You're in a title fight, but chill out. Am I right? Am I not? Anyway, so here's the radio message from Hamilton to his race engineer. Yeah, I'm stuck. His car is on top of me. Okay, Lewis, driver change. Engine off. Engine off, Lewis. Yeah. Okay, I'm out. I'm okay. Just my neck is a bit sore. But was that it? That was not the only symptoms. A couple of hours after the race, the full impact hit Hamilton. He began suffering severe muscle aches and pounding headaches caused by the way that the tire had compressed his neck and spine. He was flown to a specialist in New York for extensive scans to rule out any fractures or neurological injuries. Thankfully, he was cleared to race at the next round in Russia. But this experience shook him. As he told the media afterwards, he felt incredibly lucky just to be alive, saying, I have a bit of a headache and some dizziness, but I'm so grateful to the halo. It saved my life and saved my neck. Honestly, this picture looks terrifying. I'm really glad he's okay, and really glad the halo exists. Brazil. Hamilton had qualified P1. The FIA was investigating his rear wing though, and it was found to have opened more than the regulations allowed it. Of course it had. He was sent to the back of the grid for the sprint race. However, he never quit. He fought his way back up and made up 15 whole places to eventually finish in P5. But he couldn't celebrate. After the sprint, he got a 5 place grid penalty for an engine change. How unlucky could this man be? This meant that he would be starting 10th for Sunday's race. From 10th on the grid, he drove one of the finest recovery drives of his entire career. He fought past the superbly defending Sergio Perez and set about hunting down Verstappen. On lap 48, he tried the bold move around the outside of turn 4, but Verstappen simply refused and pushed both cars off the track. Astonishingly, the stewards gave no penalty, which is new for them because honestly they always give penalties. They hand out penalties for everything. Hand out a 5-second penalty for this, for that. Honestly, I don't know how that happened. But the fight raged on. 11 laps later, Hamilton finally made the move stick. He swept through to win, completing an extraordinary comeback, slashing the title gap to just 14 points. Across the weekend, he gained 24 whole positions, making this the most incredible comeback ever, in my opinion. The 2021 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was one of the most controversial races of the season, and in my opinion, the second most controversial one. Hamilton was in pole position, but the race was red flagged 2 times due to crashes. The race restarted with Verstappen ahead of Hamilton. At one restart, Verstappen was ahead, then gained a position by running off the track. So the Red Bull team ordered him to slow down and let Hamilton by. Instead of pulling to one side of the track, guess what? He decided to stay planted in the middle of the track. And it's not that tight. He could have pulled to the left, he could have pulled to the right, he could have let Hamilton pass, and then he could have tried and overtake him again. But he didn't do that. He stayed planted and brake tested Hamilton. Now, obviously, Verstappen argued that it was on Hamilton and that he had done what he should have done. Eventually, he was handed a 10-second place penalty for brake testing his rival. But that's what you get, Max, when you don't follow the rules. That race left them equal on points coming into Abu Dhabi. Whoever finished higher would win the 2021 World Drivers' Championship. After one of the most intense and controversial races of the season, the championship arrived at its final destination. Equal on points, one race remaining, one champion to be crowned. Would it go Dutch or British in 2021? A historic gate for Hamilton or a first for Verstappen? Verstappen had the upper hand, having qualified on pole for the Sunday race. But despite starting second, Hamilton had an incredible start. Way better than Verstappen and led the race until the first round of pit stops. After 6 laps after his pit stop, he managed to overtake Sergio Perez and maintain his lead for the next 37 laps. And that's where the whole controversy starts. And that's why 2021 is still being talked about today. Our GOAT, Nicholas Latifi, crashes and triggers a safety car. Which, okay, fine by me. Red Bull immediately pit Verstappen while Mercedes choose to keep Hamilton now to maintain track position. Again, fine by me. Verstappen came out behind 5 lapped cars, and keep that in mind. Behind 5 lapped cars. Originally, the race director Michael Massey, which is the whole problem in this 2021 season finale story, chose not to allow the lapped cars to overtake. But guess what he did? He changed his decision, completely breaking the rules. If the lapped cars are to overtake the safety car, all of them must do so. Instead, what did he do? He only let the 5 lapped cars, remember? The 5 lapped cars between Verstappen and Hamilton overtake. Now, that was giving a clear last lap race throughout. Let me remind you something. According to Article B5.13.5b of the FIA Formula One sporting regulations, the safety car must return to the pits at the end of the lap, following the message, lapped cars may now overtake. This rule mandates that all lapped cars be allowed to pass, not only the 5 between the 2 title contenders, and explicitly requires the safety car to remain for an additional lap after this instruction is given. Now, this message was given with 1 lap left. And what happened? Well, the rule was completely bypassed in the 2021 season finale. The safety car didn't do 1 final lap because that meant the race would end under safety car. Instead, guess what happened? It went straight back into the pits. This meant that there would be 1 final lap of racing after the leader crossed the start-finish line. And obviously, Verstappen, with a huge tire advantage, overtook Hamilton in turn 4. Hamilton couldn't fight back, and Verstappen crossed the finish line first, being crowned 2021 World Drivers' Champion. Did he deserve this? Absolutely not. Was this a real rip-off? Absolutely yes. Did the championship still go Dutch, and is it still in the record books written as 2021 World Champion Max Verstappen? Well, it is. But 2 very clearly written regulations were broken within the span of 5 laps, and the champion was crowned without earning it by pure skill. Now, sorry if my emotions are getting in the way, but I just told you the regulations, didn't I? Just check it out again. I literally, you need to let all the cars go by. Did he let all the cars go by? No, he only let 5. You literally, man, do you not understand? You need to let all the cars go by. You didn't. Okay, that's one thing. The biggest thing, the safety car needs to do 1 lap after the lap cars go by. Did it do 1 lap? It obviously didn't know. It went into the pits. Because if he had, Hamilton would have been an 8-time world champion by now. Is he though? He is not. But as many say, Hamilton deserved that race win. And Verstappen deserved that championship. I still consider Hamilton as an 8-time world champion. I still consider Verstappen as a very good driver, but that first championship was absolutely not his. Hamilton is the 2021 world champion, officially in my mind. Sorry guys if you don't like this, but that's just how I think it is, okay? Let's just jump into the next year, because this is very controversial, and I'm not up to discussing this anymore because it was very, very unfairly. Now, for the first time in years, Mercedes was not competing on the front of the grid. With the new aerodynamic and flow regulations for the 2022 season, Mercedes couldn't keep up with Red Bull and Ferrari. They had very severe bouncing issues because of how low they had fitted the floors, and this had caused problems to the drivers. It was a very difficult season for Mercedes, and adding to all that, they had just hired a new driver, George Russell. Now, Hamilton couldn't fight for a single race win, although he had competed for a few podium finishes. But he never backed down, obviously, and always drove his heart out with a purpose. However, the car just couldn't deliver the results. They had some highs with some podiums and some very lows as well as some DNFs, but Hamilton still had unfinished business. He dreamed of one last thing: winning an eighth title. All an unmatchable record. But was Mercedes the team that would lead him to his eighth title? 2023 brought yet another difficult season for the once mighty Mercedes. This time, Hamilton grew openly frustrated, publicly criticizing his own team and accusing them of not listening to his feedback about the car's fundamental problems. Eventually, they did change the car concept and it did help, but they became genuine, consistent podium contenders. But wins remained just out of reach yet. There was one tantalizing moment in Hungary where Hamilton snatched pole position by an absolutely microscopic margin, just by 0.003 of a second, 0.003 seconds. But he still couldn't convert into a race victory that day. The wins simply weren't coming, and time was ticking. He was growing older. 2024, and finally, things began to improve. Compared to the two previous miserable years, this was a genuinely encouraging season for Mercedes. They managed to win 3 races in total, 2 with Hamilton and 1 with Russell. He managed to break his 56 race winless streak and get his 9th win on Silverstone on home soil. And just a couple of races later, Hamilton once again got his 2nd race win of the season at the Circuit Spa-Francorchamps. But little did Mercedes know that this would be their last ever race win together. Hamilton had announced earlier in the season that he was moving to Ferrari to chase a historic 8th title with the team. Mercedes was now left with the job of finding a new driver able to close the huge gap Hamilton had left. Bizarrely, though, it wasn't as hard. They very easily made a deal with the young Italian Kimi Antonelli for the 2025 season. The silver chapter had officially come to an end. The records had been written, the history had been made, and the era that defined Formula One was over. But for Lewis Hamilton, one dream remained: being crowned champion in red. I have to say, mate, it's been epic working with you. Good man, stellar job today, bud. But yeah, it's been a pleasure all the way. Yeah, Bono, we dreamed alone, but together we believed. And as a team, we achieved things that only. Thank you for all the courage, the determination, the passion, and for seeing me and supporting me. What started out as a leap of pure faith turned into a journey into the history books. We did everything together, and I'm so grateful to everyone, both here and back at the factory. From the bottom of my heart, all the best. Thank you, Louis. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and so grateful to be part of this chapter of your life. And best of luck for the next one. I love you guys. I really do. We love you too, Louis, and you're always going to be part of this family. And if you can't win, and if we can't win, you should win. That was his last radio message for the team he had spent 12 whole years with. The team that had brought him all the records imaginable. The team that had made him win 7 world titles, equal Michael Schumacher. That was truly the end of an era. 246 races later, the silver era was over. As this team change was incredibly shocking, the media obviously went ballistic on why Hamilton was leaving. There was plenty of speculation and many theories. Some said that Hamilton was losing trust in the team because even though he was asking for long-term contracts, they only gave him a 1+1 yearly contract with exit clauses. They speculated that Hamilton understood the game Mercedes was playing and they thought that Mercedes was going to dump him by the end of 2025 to not miss out on a young Kimi Antonelli. So he decided to leave rather than be betrayed by the team that shaped 12 years of his life. However, neither Hamilton nor Mercedes backed any of these theories, and the official reason still remains. Um, why he moved teams is because he wanted to win an eighth title wearing red. Now, you can believe the theories. I don't believe the theories. I listen to what he says, and I don't care about what other people say. Hamilton, who's now the new Ferrari driver, replacing Carlos Sainz. A brand new start after 12 years. The Mercedes era was truly finally over. His team factory? No longer in Brackley. It was in Maranello. The car was now scarlet red, not silver, nor black. The new team sponsors were not Tommy Hilfiger and Monster. They were Georgian Money and Celsius. But how competitive would Ferrari be? And how fast would Hamilton adapt to a completely new team with a completely new setup? At first, there was a genuine flash of magic. Round two, China, a track where Hamilton had always excelled. He took pole for the sprint race and then went on to win it. For one glorious weekend, it looked like the old Hamilton had never left at all. Like he'd ever needed, like all he'd ever needed was a competitive car beneath him. Ferrari fans dared to dream. But sadly, this early sparkle turned out to be nothing more than a little fairy dust. A brief, deceptive glimpse of brilliance, right before what would be a genuinely catastrophic remainder of the season. The race pace never came. Time and time again, Hamilton found himself outside the points. He retired from a couple of races. The critics were merciless. They called him washed, declared his time was over. Hamilton called himself absolutely useless. He was so low, he said Ferrari should ditch him for a better driver. He didn't score a podium for the first time in 18 seasons in the sport. The closest he ever got to a podium was a P4 finish in Silverstone. Was this really how the dream would end? Just months earlier, he'd called himself useless. Now, with a refreshed engineering team and a new generation of regulations, something had completely changed inside him. The spark to win had never disappeared. It just needed a bit of help to come back as hot as before. Round 2, China, couple of months ago. Hamilton fought his teammate so hard they nearly made contact several times. But eventually, it was all extremely worth it. The 1 year wait was over. Hamilton got his first podium in red. The same man that was called washed by the media, the same man criticizing himself so harshly. That same man was standing on the podium. P3 for Lewis Hamilton in China. Back to back P2 finishes in Canada and Monaco pushed Hamilton high up in the championship standings. He was right behind the two Mercedes of Kimi Antonelli, current championship leader, and George Russell, former teammate of his. Speaking after Monaco, Hamilton said his first Ferrari win couldn't be closer. And he wasn't quite wrong. Barcelona, round 8, 14th of June. Hamilton took the lead of the race with a very bold three-stop strategy and managed to keep a 19.6-second gap between him and Russell in second. Hamilton had finally made the first part of the dream come true. Finally, a first win in red, a first win for Maranello. He owned the top step that way and won by pure merit. On the 14th of June 2026, Hamilton was at the very, very top of the world. So, where does this whole story leave us? Years from now, they will remember the boy who dreamed of Formula One, the champion who changed it forever, and the 7 titles that made his name immortal. But perhaps the greatest moment of his story is one we haven't witnessed yet. The moment when 7 becomes 8, and a dream that began so many years ago becomes history once again. Could Lewis Hamilton win the 8th in Scarlet Red, impress all of us, and mark his name in the history books forever? He is the greatest of all times. Unarguably, he has beaten records people thought impossible. But can he own that last unmatchable record? And that is the extraordinary story of Lewis Hamilton. Every single one of those 100+ victories, each a chapter in a career unlike no other. From a kid who just won 1 world championship to a 7-time world champion, sitting atop the record books. Thank you so much for listening to this first episode. And if you enjoyed it, do stick around because there are plenty more drivers and plenty more incredible stories to come. Until next time, keep dreaming the impossible. Because, as a certain 7-time world champion once said, you can do it too, man. I believe in you guys. Thank you very much.